right, everybody. So we got a interview for y'all, nice treat for y'all. We got Angel of Restorative Justice Coalition, is it correct?
Yeah, correct. Hey, how are you?
I'm doing great, man. Thanks for joining us today. Um, so before we get too started, before we get too in depth, uh, just tell us a little about yourself and a little bit about like how you started the RJ Coalition on Instagram.
Absolutely. So my name is Angel D'Angelo, born and raised here in Tampa, Florida. Restorative Justice Coalition was born. Myself and Sadie Dean started it back in 2017 because we recognized that there was not a lot of conversations going on around the criminal justice system or criminal legal system and police brutality, police violence, and the things that lead to the concept of crime in Tampa. So we really wanted to get involved from that angle and have learned a lot since 2017. From that work, a lot of mistakes were made, of course, but a lot of wins were made. And we've just been kind of trekking along. We're a grassroots organization, so we don't get paid for the work we do. We go to our day jobs and then come out and do what we can here in Tampa.
Awesome. Um, that's interesting that you said it started in 2017 because I actually um, didn't get hip until like 2021. That's when I started following the page and getting some of that good information that you guys post and everything. So that's actually really cool.
Yeah, I think we didn't get on Instagram till 2021. We were originally just like Facebook. And then, Instagram started growing in popularity around organizing spaces and we kind of hit up there.
Awesome. So yeah, what I noticed that the initial like the how you can put story highlights on your page, right? And one of the ideas that we've been talking about lately on the show is just the concept of like really how easy it is to get caught up in the criminal justice system.
Yeah.
And I know Bronze has been talking about this book, Three Felonies a Day. That's like,
Yeah, I'm really obsessed with this book. I just finished it. When I was looking on your Instagram, kind of just doing a little bit of research because I hadn't heard of it. And I've heard the phrase restorative justice kind of thrown around, but I never actually got into it. And just actually reading it is like, okay, this is kind of what I'm into because it's like kind of addressing the issue instead of just slapping somebody on the wrist. A lot of times, there's not anything that's conclusive that says that even works. So it's like trying to get creative with these different ways that we can handle these I guess societal issues versus just everybody just decides to call the police if there's an issue. It's like a lot of times I look at a lot of this shit, I'm like, I don't know if this is police worthy. Like I don't know if they don't seem to have the finesse or the bandwidth to actually handle a situation like this.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely valid. And I think a lot of us learn by seeing or learn by our experiences in the community. But it's always funny when people are like, does the system work? Well, the answer to that question depends on what you mean by work. So does it
Of course.
work to stop crime? Does it work to make us safer? No. But does it work to make somebody richer? Does it work to maintain a race and class status in the US? Yes, it works very well. And you have to ask yourself, which one of those was it actually intended to do? Was it intended to make us safer, or was it intended to maintain a race and class structure in the United States? So the answer is number two. It was intended to maintain, if you've ever watched the documentary 13th or read the book, The New Jim Crow by Dr. Michelle Alexander, those will really open your eyes to a lot of things that the criminal justice system exists to do. Obviously, the chattel slavery ended in the United States theoretically in 1865. But the 13th Amendment, which abolished it, had an exception. And that exception is forced servitude is illegal unless you have been duly convicted of a crime. Not long after the 1865 passage of the 13th Amendment, did laws come out that started criminalizing activities that just so happened to impact newly freed Black people. So it didn't take long before the institution of slavery reformed through the criminal justice system. Through there, obviously, because the 13th Amendment is race neutral, of course, some white people and some Latino people get thrown into the system. But it was actually created so that way the United States did not lose that labor and that capital that they lost when the institution of chattel slavery was abolished.
that's actually kind of interesting because I think it ties into this recent story going viral. I forgot the gentleman's name, but the guy that donated his check, he was doing some janitorial work. He's in prison and he works as a janitor and he gets paid 13 cents an hour. And he worked 146 hours and he got paid like 17 bones and he donated it to to help out for aid in Palestine. So it's just like that's the direct link to what you were just talking about, right?
13
Yeah,
cents an hour sounds like a Easter egg.
Right?
Sounds like they're trying to be funny.
yeah. It's almost like they're just paying to say that they paid. When you think about it, no one can sustain on that. And if you look at the definition, the United States' own definition of human trafficking, it defines human trafficking as forced servitude. Well, if you're incarcerated in the United States, you're forced to work. Yes, they may pay you 13 cents or something an hour, but if you do not work, you will face a punishment. If you're forced to work, that is slavery. So the only difference between um, human trafficking and the prison system is one is legal and one is not legal. So you can really look at the prison system as legalized human trafficking, which is in effect by the United States' own definition, slavery.
And then on top of that, consider the fact that, eventually they come out, like, back to whether or not this works in the way that you're trying to look at it. Recidivism is like like all-time high. Like, I think I read somewhere that it was like somewhere within 70% in the last 5 years. So they're going to reoffend, maybe accidentally, because of how these laws are constructed. They're not so specific. They're usually cast with a wide net, and then you mess around and get yourself caught up, and now you're right back in the system, unfortunately.
Well, it's incredibly easy. So I don't have any shame. I went through misdemeanor probation before, and when I went through it, I was making decent money. I was considered myself at that point in time relatively middle class, and I struggled to get through it. And I had a vehicle, I had a steady job. The arrest did not affect my job. I had family to support me. So imagine if you just have a little bit less than that. You have
Yeah.
no car. You lose your job because of the arrest. How are you going to make your probation appointments? How are you going to pay the fees? How are you going to do the community service that you're required to do? Well, you're not. So naturally, you're going to reoffend just by the virtue of the system. So it is actually designed, it is a well-oiled machine to ensure that you go in, come out, go back in. Yes, we always hear those stories. There's always that one story of that one guy who went to prison and turned his life around, and that's wonderful. That's the exception. That's not the rule.
Sheesh. So, what are some examples of like some restorative solutions or because a lot of times when people think abolition, they're just like, oh, you're just gonna let everybody out, like you're just gonna it's always like the wildest things, like we need somewhere to put R. Kelly, and it's like, wait, that's not what's going on. So what does abolition look like, I guess in layman's
Not
terms?
scare to not scare people.
Right, so we can exactly.
Well, it's really interesting because I think, like most people, I struggled with it too because I'm like, what do you do with the murderers? What do you do with the rapists? And, I actually lost a family member to homicide before, so that's not a theory to me. That's a real life experience. Um, And then I started seeing some work, primarily Dr. Angela Davis, but some other abolitionists as well, who started talking about abolition a little differently. And that really opened my mind to it. Instead of thinking, what do we do with R. Kelly or whoever has already done something so harmful, why aren't we asking the question of what could we have done to stop that from happening in the first place? And that to me is what abolition is. That to me is what defund the police is. If we have a society where your needs are met, you have a home, you have food, you have water that's clean, you have mental health care access and physical health care access, no matter what, then you're not likely going to wake up in the morning and say, you know what I want to do? Rob a 7-Eleven. That's probably not what you're going to wake up and do. You're probably going to go about your life living it. And I'm not saying violence wouldn't happen. I'm not saying harm wouldn't happen, but the amount of it would be so much fewer that we would be able to have more creative responses. Right now, if there's a homicide, like there's a homicide we're dealing with now, and the only solution we have is this man's got to go to jail because we have no place to put this man. But that's because there's homicides every day. So it's like we don't have the time to come up with creative solutions. But if violence will never be zero. We're not idealists. We don't believe we'll live in a perfect world. But if it wasn't the norm, if it wasn't something that we had to think of every single time I walk outside this house, that, oh my God, violence could happen. If it was truly the exception, we
Right.
might be able to actually come up with creative solutions to respond to violence. And one thing I always like to let people know, restorative justice is not a system. It's a culture, and it's actually our human nature. If you study pre-colonial Africa, pre-colonial Asia, Australia, even pre-colonial Europe, you'll see people handle things in a communal way. They
The
didn't just
community.
Right, they didn't just lock people away. They didn't just say, we don't have a solution, you're done for, you're nothing. They came up with solutions, but also because they were invested in the communities they lived in and that was their community, they also didn't feel the need to go around murdering and killing.
Mm, that's interesting. Um, you were saying about actually dealing with a homicide right now. Uh, is is that the John Walter Lay case?
It is,
Which
yes,
which isn't, I guess, there's still no charges, correct?
correct. So the murder occurred on February 2nd, and as of today, there have not been charges filed.
So we are a month and a month and a couple days, and they know who the guy is, correct?
100%. They knew who it was at the scene of the
Yeah,
crime.
they got him named. They got his name and everything everywhere.
Yeah,
They
and the
got me not
man
Okay,
being able to see a picture of him.
Yep, and the man admitted it. I mean, he sent a text message saying he had to shoot. He went by Walt. He had to shoot Walt, allegedly over self-defense. As you might be aware, the state of Florida is a stand your ground state. Uh,
correct.
and this is not the first time Restorative Justice Coalition has had to deal with this contradiction. Because on Monday we're saying abolish the system. On Tuesday now we have someone that we're like, hey, this person just killed someone, lock them up. And people are like, how can you flip the
Right,
switch
right.
like that? And it is because of what I said before. It's because we are sensible in the work we do. The priority number one is protecting the people in the community that we are serving. And we can't do that if a person is able to just get away scot-free killing someone. So you kill somebody once and get away with it. What's going to happen when you do it the second time or the third time? So in these cases, we do have to advocate for arrest. And the last time we had to deal with this was when Marquise McGloughlin was killed in Pinellas County. He was a black man who parked in a parking spot. It was a handicap parking spot, and some white man got angry about it and decided to take that matter into his own hands and decided apparently the death penalty was appropriate for that. Shot him and killed him. Pinellas County sheriffs decided not to arrest him because of stand your ground. The white man had a history of harassing black men at this gas station. We had to organize and say this is not safe for the black community in Pinellas County. So now we're saying the same thing. This is not safe for the gay community in Hillsborough County. Like, we have no alternative. But it's
Excuse
also
me.
amazing that this same police department, if a gay person or a transgender person is out there and they are medicating with drugs to deal with discrimination or they're doing sex work because they can't get another job, the police have no problem pulling up and
Yeah,
arresting them.
Mm.
yeah,
So
yeah. It's not really a good look in the city. I see a lot like in my part of town in Tampa where they're just kind of messing with like unhoused and stuff like that. Where it's like, man, it's got to be something better to do than just be riding around doing this.
Right. Yeah, we see that a lot too. I have confronted Tampa police officers and Hillsborough County Sheriff's officers for harassing our houseless neighbors who are just the crime of just existing essentially at that point. I mean, we used to have these park benches and they've taken so many of them away. But there was a park bench and there was a homeless guy laying on it and the police woke him up, harassed him, degraded him, berated him verbally, just so that way he would move and that guy had nowhere else to go, so he just wound up on the next park bench. What did
Yeah,
that do?
there's a little spot on my side of town. They just put up a gate where a lot of them were hanging out at, And I walk past there with my dog all the time, and they're not, obviously they're not bothering anybody. And then obviously, we've seen lately that they're just trying to criminalize, being unhoused, and it's like it's different if people are harassing people, but they're just kind of hanging out there, like they're chilling. So I see them all the time, and oftentimes I help them out where I can, but like they just put that big old gate up, and now none of them are out there anymore. And I was like, okay, that's kind of ill.
Well, and the reality is, I'm not saying that, obviously we all have our struggles, so sometimes I can't help somebody out. I always am
Yeah,
respectful, but I can't always do it. But the reality is, and what I think most Americans don't want to admit, is you have a greater chance of being them than you ever have a chance of being Bill Gates or Elon Musk.
I literally just said to my wife
That's
today,
wild.
because I was literally just talking to my wife about it, and I was like, man, a lot of people really like one missed paycheck away for real. Like it's really, you really 1 foot out the door. If it's something get a little bit shaky, then you could find yourself in the same situation, and then now you're being, harassed for, something that's kind of out of your control at times.
Yeah.
Man, that is it's a scary reality.
Yeah,
And I think that's something that people, for whatever reason, don't want to confront. But that's something that's doable at kind of the ballot box, right? Like there are candidates that would be, I guess, better served to support the constituency, but for whatever reason, people don't vote that way, and that's kind of what we see. I mean, I live in Atlanta, so I'm dealing with some of that here. I know it was a big letdown when Andrew Gillum lost to
Yeah.
DeSantis, and just DeSantis is a whole other beast. But like, how how has the state changed? Since he's been in power, or like how has that affected the work that you do with RJ Coalition?
I never predicted we'd be in the situation that we're in back when we started doing the work we did. Even when Governor DeSantis first took office, I didn't think it would be this bad. But it is really mind-boggling how bad it is. There are laws that passed, even though they would eventually get thrown out by Supreme Court rulings that have completely impacted the way we organize. It was illegal for a hot minute to protest. It was legal to run over protesters with a car for a hot minute. They're actually just criminalized homelessness completely. If you're not in
yeah,
a in encampment, I think the law just was signed. I don't know if it's most laws in Florida become effective July 1st, so I'm not sure if it's effective yet. But whenever it becomes effective, you can just go to jail just for being anywhere but a homeless encampment. So just being homeless is now illegal, and I'm sure that will get thrown out by a Supreme Court ruling. But the laws around gender affirming care and the don't say gay bills and all these things that have happened, we never saw this coming. And it just 1 minute, the legislators just introducing these out the gate, and we're going out there lobbying, hundreds of people protesting, and they just don't care. So it really shows that we're not really living in a democracy, because in a democracy, if the people don't want something, that's what the whole idea is. But overwhelmingly, the people disagree with the policies and they're still passing. And they say, well, why are we voting them? And why are the Floridians doing that? Because they changed the laws so that way we get erased from voter rolls
Mm.
and don't know that we've been erased until it's too late to re register. Or if you have certain barriers, such as transportation, and you can't get to a voter site, they change the mail in laws. They change the way you can vote by mail. So they have to cheat to win, and they're not afraid to do it.
yeah. They picking up like the mail-in boxes, or the postal boxes, and making you have to stand in line in these long times. And I think I've heard in some places they've like criminalized like people trying to pass out like refreshments to people in line. Like they're making it so difficult to where, like in Georgia, I was hearing that there was like double digit hour waiting times. But if you were in time, you were in line, you were okay. but then they're making it, purposefully more
Yeah,
difficult for you to take
but
care of it. And they won't just make that a holiday so that we can all just kind of,
for sure.
have the time off.
Because that's the thing. It's like you're in line and you're waiting, but then it's like, okay, dinner need to get cooked. I got kids to take.
I gotta get my
I got to
kids.
get back home to like. I got work in the morning, or like I literally just came here to drop this off on my lunch break real quick. Like it's it's every angle. A lot of times when I see movies and they're really well thought out, I'm like, oh my god, they thought of everything. And like this is like one of the times where I'm like, damn, they thought of everything, and they found a way to block it. And it's just like,
It's brilliantly evil.
yeah,
Like
yeah.
my brain doesn't even work that way where I can think of all the different ways I could fuck somebody out of like something very simple. I don't possess that level of intellect, I guess, in being sinister. But yeah, I try to, like, luckily my job gives me some time. I think they give us like 8 hours or something, so I can pretty much take the day off and handle my business, though I am walking distance from my voting place. So
Right, exactly. I mean, I can do the same, but you got to think about the working class, the retail class,
yeah,
the gig economy class that just have to get by, cannot miss a shift, don't get PTO, or had to use up their PTO because they're raising kids and kids
Crazy.
get sick. And the
of
thing is,
course.
like you said, it's sinister and it's intellect. Like these are not like the idea of the racist podunk hillbilly somewhere, like, and they're uneducated. Yeah, that person exists, but racism and sexism and heterosexism, these things are designed by intelligent people that know that their power is only so good so long as the working class does not uprise against them. So what you're going to do instead is tell the working class your enemy is not the rich landlords and bosses and police and jailers. Your enemy is that immigrant over there that's stealing your job, that gay person that's trying to corrupt your children, that black person that's trying to do this, that woman that's trying to do this. So they just orchestrate enemies within the working class so that way we're fighting each other
Mm.
and we're voting against each other and ourselves. So that way we can retain what little pieces of power we think we have, even though we really don't have much at all.
It's always tough, um, because I'm pretty sure like a lot of people have similar anecdotal stories where they're talking to, a coworker or even a friend or a family member that maybe has like an opposing political view, and you guys agree on the issue, or like, okay, this inflation stuff is getting out of hand, and then you can present them with, hey, it's not actually due to anything except people, you know, being greedy. It's it's the only reason that we have it at this point. And by people, the corporations, not your neighbor. Uh, but some kind of warped way it'll get twisted into, well, if this community didn't do this, then we wouldn't have these problems. And it's like, or somebody will tell you about these like grand hospital bills that they have, or whatever else, and you'll bring up healthcare for all, which is apparently extremely popular, and they're like, well, who's got to pay for it?
And would save the country money,
And
actually. I think I forget the exact number, but there was a double digit billion number that if they just gave it out based on the way we're being charged for it currently, so that literally lets you know, like, this is not even a money thing, because
no,
everything's a money thing. But at this point, it's like, no, we just let them deal with how they've been dealing.
Well, and you know what's interesting to me, even in this recent homicide, and anytime we have an issue in the community where someone gets hurt or there's violence, we had a shooting in Ybor City recently. That was a one-off incident. It wasn't something that was happening regularly. In Ybor City, it's a nightlife district, so it's where I live. There are thousands of Tampa Police Department cops there every Friday, Saturday night, and this night was no different. They were all out there, and two people still got killed. And the solution is always, we need more cops. We need more cops. We need to fund Tampa Police Department more. I'm like, well, they're the highest funded department. They were the highest funded department at the time that it happened. They were out there in droves when it happened. Why is the solution more police when they didn't do anything to stop it? Like, they're
wow,
not doing anything to stop it. What if the solution was somewhere else? What if there was no more poverty then there was less likely anyone would ever join a gang or be part of any type of underground or black market or whatever you want to call it, whatever the root cause of the issue is. What if we solve the issue at the root? And the funny thing is, I did research, like when the Affordable Care Act passed, evidence showed that even though that's certainly not even close to Medicare for all, but it's the closest that we've ever had in the US, even the amount that it saved in criminal justice, in healthcare, and all of that, like healthcare is criminal justice reform, housing is criminal justice reform,
Mm.
education is criminal justice reform, transit is criminal justice reform, everything except more jails and police is criminal justice reform. But why is it that our cities only want to put more money in jails and police? Well, I know the answer, but it's time for other people to wake up to what that answer is.
Wow. So, so that leads me to another question. When we're talking about, this most recent murder that has been, still no charges. What you're talking about with the guy at the gas station. It's I think the NAACP, sent out a warning to, black people that, hey, Florida, think about it. Would you say that Florida or Tampa, even more specifically, is like a safe place for underserved or underrepresented communities like the black community or LGBTQ community?
So I would say yes and no. So on the surface, no, because of these kind of things, the violence and the systemic issues we face here, although those are issues that are going to be countrywide,
Mm-hmm.
they're just very apparent here in our city. But also at the same time, for every horrible thing we hear happening in the black community, for every horrible thing we hear about in the LGBTQ community here, there is also so much love and power here in Tampa. So I say to anyone who's thinking of coming to Tampa, whether to move here for a job, whether for whatever reason, for a vacation or whatever, there is community and people here for you. You just got to find the right spot and build the
Right.
power. I'm very much against the idea of telling people to write off Florida or write off Tampa, because the idea, first of all, not all of us can leave. I've had a lot of transgender
Yeah.
friends leave. I don't
Mm.
blame them. I don't judge them. I've had a lot of black and brown and immigrant friends leave. I don't blame them. But we cannot all leave, nor should we, because if we do all leave, then it's never going to change.
Right.
But we are still going to be here to fight. And I think anyone can thrive in Tampa, regardless of who you are. But if you are going to come here to any part of Florida, you do need to be aware of some of the systemic issues that we have and how they manifest here in Tampa.
Okay. Fair. I think that is a great answer for honestly majority of the country. Really, it's just like this is what it is. We got to fight it. Wherever we are. Uh,
Let's be more proactive than reactive. Like you said, everybody can't just leave, and we shouldn't. Like, if we love this country as much as we all say we do, even with its flaws, like, we should be able to criticize it, yeah, because we want it to be better, and it should be better for everybody, especially if you know everybody, all the different demographics are a part of our community. So, like, just disappearing it doesn't mean that everybody's gone. Like, you still have to. We all have to coexist.
no, honestly,
Exactly. Exactly. And at this point, it's actually, it is a global issue. There's no place on earth where a single set of people can be assuredly safe, because you can go somewhere where maybe they don't have as much poverty, but then the homophobia there is 10 times what it is here. Or you could go somewhere where they have universal health care, but the racism is unimaginable compared to, here or whatever. So there's systemic issues that are all across the globe, and it all stems down to all across the world. A small set of people have all the power and all the wealth, and they want to keep that. So we may have abolished, theoretically, monarchies, or at least monarchies that actually have power, but have we really? Because if you really look at, like, what was a monarchy, but you are born into privilege and prestige and power? Well, what is being the child of a billionaire but the same thing?
Mm. Uh, so I got a couple more questions, and I'm gonna let you get out of here. Uh, House Bill 187. What is that? Why do we need to know about that? Um, yeah, just a general rundown on what that is.
So I run across a lot of bills. Do you happen to remember what we wrote about it?
187. 187, I think, was the one that was making some amendments to anti-Semitism. Um, it just recently passed with a couple carve-outs to protect the First Amendment.
Well, what's interesting about the recent effort, both at the local and state and national level, international level, on responding to anti-Semitism is during 2020 and 2021, while the Black Lives Matter was really powerful, we got a lot of pushback from actual neo-Nazis who were roaming our streets, passing out anti-Semitic, anti-Black, anti-gay, anti-trans literature. And not a single government leader stepped up to fight against anti-Semitism then. But now that people are rising in support of the Palestinian people, suddenly we care about anti-Semitism and we want to do something about it. And the reality is, although these conversations are not easy to have, they are not concerned about anti-Semitism. They do not care about the well-being of Jewish Americans all of a sudden. They care about the power that is having a Middle Eastern ally or having control over a Middle Eastern country, which would be Israel. So when you look at the United States' relationship with the Middle East, that is the only place that we're actually really allowed in regularly, and it allows us to monitor and control that side of the world. So why would the United States want to lose that diplomatic relationship with that country, and why would they want its indigenous people to have its land back? And then also the United States is vulnerable because what if its indigenous people rise up? Then what would they say about that? So unfortunately, our Jewish neighbors are being used as a pawn in this, and they're being told that this is about them and their rights, when the reality is, why isn't the solution, instead of we need to protect a state for a group of people, why isn't the solution to stop anti-Semitism globally so that way they do not need one specific state to live in?
It's a fair point.
So
Yeah.
I would say the reason we're worried about these bills is because they are not designed to protect our Jewish neighbors. They're designed to suppress our rights to oppose this violence, this war, and demand a ceasefire. And we have seen what Red Scares do. This is essentially a Red Scare to the point where they want to make it illegal for us to speak against war. And we are taxpayers. We have a right to say, I don't want my tax dollars going taking 40,000 plus Palestinian lives for whatever reason.
No, that is a valid point. And yeah, I completely agree. I saw it and I was I've been kind of dumbfounded by the amount of like carnage doesn't feel right because of where it stems from, but like just the amount of people that have lost their jobs or uh, lost opportunities due to speaking out against a war that we don't even necessarily have troops in. It's like, so is the speech free or not? I mean, people, the heads of colleges, like from anywhere you can think of, like it doesn't matter. They're pulling anybody down for having, and these people weren't even actually being critical of anything. They were just kind of allowing free speech to go on, and they got removed. So it was just like, I think we're losing the plot here, or maybe we're not. Maybe this has been the plot the whole time.
Well, yes, it
Oh,
has been. And the thing about it is they've made it to a point, and what they're trying to pass locally and at the state level is to say criticism of Israel is anti-Semitic. I mean, and in what way is that so? We can criticize Saudi Arabia and we're not anti-Muslim, right? We can criticize any other country and we're not anti the people of it. We criticize Russia all the time. I don't have any animosity towards Russian people, but the United States is always criticizing Russia. Why is that okay? But we can't criticize what the Israeli government is doing. And if we do, it's because we have a hatred towards a certain class of people. Obviously not. But they have made it to the point to where a lot of people believe that. And therefore, if you speak out against it, now you're anti-Semitic. So you have a couple choices to make. You either don't speak, or you risk being seen as anti-Semitic and you lose your job, you lose your family, you lose all of this. A lot of people aren't going to take the risk. So there's a lot of people out there who oppose what's going on but don't want to say anything because as humans, we're not going to have the food taken from our tables.
Right.
So, but I will say the American people have shown surprising response to this. Like they are not taking this, we're not taking this as quietly as they expected. So they are scrambling right now, trying to
Right.
figure out how they can shut us up. But history shows they can censor us for a while, they can arrest us, jail us, cost us our jobs. We read the history books about McCarthyism and the Red Scare, and although those people were made to be an enemy during it, they're heroes now.
That's real. Bros, you had something?
Yeah, I was gonna say that's basically what was happening in Michigan. I mean, where everybody was voting uncommitted. Like that was basically like their way of like letting us know, like, yeah, we're not with this.
Yeah.
Something's had to happen. So it seems like
And
people
then
putting their foot on the gas in the right times.
right.
Yep.
Uh, with that, I mean, honestly, that would count, I guess, kind of as much of a W as we're going to get right now. Kamala Harris, the vice president, did come out and say that we're trying to get a ceasefire for 6 weeks, which is actually just a pause. But whatever we can do is what we can do. But what are some wins that you can say that you've seen in recent times, since you guys have been doing this work? Um, I
Yeah,
know. Go ahead. Sorry about
no, absolutely. So, we helped on a campaign which re-enfranchised a large amount of voters in Florida. So, Floridians, Restoration of Rights campaign, we're not affiliated with them, but we help pass out petitions so that way, if you are a person who has a felony, you could still vote in the state of Florida after you've completed your terms of probation and parole, which has allowed a lot more people access to vote. Of course, they have since tried to take that away, but
that.
that was a constitutional amendment that we helped educate people on it and help get out there. We have also impacted laws here locally, like we require all city officials have to take implicit bias and cultural competency training because of work we did in 2018. That's a very small thing, but it's something that we do consider a win. I'm part of the Andrew Joseph Foundation. Andrew Joseph III was killed at 14 after police negligence, even though he had done nothing wrong. We that case went to trial in 2022, and despite the fact that we have qualified immunity, which normally protects cops from
Mm,
accountability, they lost that lawsuit, and the family has won that lawsuit, and that is beyond just the family. That is a big deal for all families impacted by police violence. So that would be a win that we helped with. There's also been a few individuals who I won't name them because it's their private stories, but individuals who faced criminal charges, and we were able to meet with the state attorney's offices and get those charges either reduced or dropped because they were not
wow.
accurate. There was police corruption involved in their cases. And we do this as non-lawyers. So I'm saying this to say anybody out there can do this work. We're nobody. Like I didn't even have a college degree when Restorative Justice Coalition started. I do now, but it's not something that has even helped me with my work. There's something known as participatory defense, and that's where people, just everyday people like me and you, review cases and we say something's not right about this police report, something's not right about this police report, something's not right about this video or this witness statement, and we go to state attorneys and say you don't have a case. You think you have a case because nobody's watching, but you don't have a case. And they're not used to people watching. Trust me, their tune changes as soon as they see the public watching. So
Wow.
even though it may feel pointless, it's not pointless to call up your senator. It's not pointless to go to city council or county commission. It is not pointless to go to school board meetings. It's not fun. It's not going to be immediate. It's going to be frustrating. Do the work that you're able to do because no matter what passion you have, you are going to run into systemic barriers that we all have to work together to unravel.
Awesome. Well, Bronze, if you don't have anything else, then
Nah. This is really exciting because
uh,
it's just kind of right in the area of the stuff I'm reading and getting into, and like I tell him all the time, like I like starting from maybe a few months ago, I was like, I kind of understand, like I'm in that abolitionist framework where I like starting to get it, like okay, the band-aid has been ripped off about like we were saying earlier, like just letting everybody out. It's like, no, I don't work like that. Like it's just a lot of this stuff probably is there's got to be a different way, but because we're just conditioned to just think of the police like that's all we know. And so once we start getting a little bit creative, and then there's just obviously people a lot smarter than me that will figure it out, and people that have written about it and everything. So just trying to inundate myself with as much information as possible because there seems to be more productive ways to do this.
Yeah, I think I'll just end on saying, you're right. Police and prisons are what we know now. And obviously, as I've even admitted, my abolition politic is not pure, it's not flawless. Sometimes I do have to resort to what
Yeah,
we have. So don't allow the unspeakable or the difficult cases to steer you away from it. That doesn't mean it's not the answer. It just means we have to work harder to find the answer. But also think about it this way. The police and prison systems are not natural. They're not created by nature. Somebody dreamt them up. So whatever the solution
yeah,
is just has to be dreamt up. We're just not sure
amazing.
what it is yet.
Awesome.
yeah,
Well,
absolutely.
Angel, if you could tell them, where to find you at, how to get involved, donations, whatever you need, man, the floor is yours.
Yeah, you can find us on Instagram at RJ Coalition or www.restorativejusticecoalition.com. Send us an email at admin@restorativejusticecoalition.org. We're grassroots. We can't help everyone that runs across, but we would love to, and we love to have conversations, difficult conversations. Just get involved. Find the work happening in your local community at the grassroots, and you will find where you fit in this work. But everybody has a place. I don't care your ability, race, religion, orientation, whatever. You have a place in this work.
All right. Hey, thank you. Appreciate
Bye,
that,
y'all.
buddy.
Appreciate it. Thank